Well, well, well. Just when you thought royal headlines couldn't get any more intriguing, reports have emerged about Andrew Parker Bowles and an alleged meeting that's got everyone talking. Now, I want to be crystal clear from the start. What we're discussing today is based on media reports, online speculation, and public commentary. None of this has been officially confirmed by the palace, and we're looking at this purely as observers of royal news. But with that said, the story that's circulating, it's absolutely fascinating and we need to talk about it. So here's what's being reported. According to various media outlets, Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's first husband, allegedly requested a private meeting with King Charles. Now, these are the kinds of stories that royal watchers live for because they're so unusual. Why would an ex-husband suddenly want a confidential audience with the current king? What could possibly be so important that it required this level of secrecy? The reports suggest this wasn't a casual reunion or a friendly chat. Sources claim it was something far more serious. Now, let's talk about what's allegedly been said in these reports. Some outlets are claiming that Andrew brought information to this meeting. Information about the past, about relationships, about how certain connections within the royal circle developed over the years. We're talking about the period in the 90s when Charles and Camilla's relationship was becoming more public, when there was so much scrutiny, so much pain, particularly in the aftermath of Diana's passing. According to these unverified reports, Andrew allegedly suggested that there was more strategy involved in how certain relationships developed than the public might have realised. I want you to think about that for a moment. Not as confirmed fact, but as a narrative that's being discussed across royal commentary channels. If these reports have any basis, and that's a big if, it would certainly change how some people view the progression of events. But here's the thing. We have to be responsible about how we discuss this. These are real people with real lives, and until official statements are made or verified evidence emerges, we're essentially discussing what amounts to very detailed speculation. What makes this story so compelling to royal watchers is the human element. Charles has been through an incredible amount in his life. The loss of his mother, the complicated history with Diana, the decades of waiting to become king, and now trying to modernise an ancient institution. According to these circulating reports, there are questions being raised about certain relationships in his past and whether he had the full picture at the time. Again, this is what's being reported, not what's been proven. The narrative that's emerged in some tabloids suggests that Camilla's journey from being one of the most controversial figures in Britain to becoming Queen Consort might have involved more calculated public relations work than people realised. Now, is that actually manipulation, or is that just smart image management? That's a question worth considering. Every public figure works on their image. Every royal has PR teams. The question being raised in these reports is about where the line is between normal reputation management and something more concerning. What's interesting is how this story has been received by the public. Social media is absolutely buzzing with opinions. Some people are saying they always suspected there was more to the story. Others are defending Camilla, pointing out that she's been unfairly targeted for decades. And then there are those who are taking a wait-and-see approach, wanting actual evidence before forming conclusions. That's probably the wisest stance, honestly. Let's consider Andrew Parker Bowles' perspective for a moment, purely based on what's being reported. If these stories have any truth to them, they suggest he feels he was promised certain considerations that never materialised. Now, is that a legitimate grievance? Or is it the complaint of someone who expected benefits that were never actually offered? We don't know. What we do know is that when former insiders start talking, whether their claims are true or not, it creates waves. One aspect of this story that's getting a lot of attention is how it's allegedly being handled behind the scenes. Reports suggest there's been quite a bit of media management happening. Some outlets are painting Andrew as unstable or unreliable. Other sources are suggesting that's exactly what you'd expect if powerful people wanted to discredit someone making uncomfortable claims. It's a classic he said, she said situation, but on a royal scale. Here's where this gets particularly sensitive, and why we need to be so careful in how we discuss it. The reports touching on Charles's mental health and his grief period after Diana's death are incredibly personal. Whether or not anyone used that information inappropriately, the fact that it's even being discussed feels like a violation of privacy. Mental health struggles are not weaknesses, and anyone going through grief deserves compassion, not analysis. So regardless of what the truth is here, we should all agree that weaponizing someone's vulnerable moments would be completely unacceptable. Now, some royal commentators have been drawing comparisons to William and Catherine's relationship. The observation being made is that their partnership appears more straightforward, less complicated by decades of public drama. But is that a fair comparison? William and Catherine have had the benefit of learning from previous generations. They've also had a different kind of courtship, one that happened partially in the public eye, but with more privacy protections than Charles ever had. It's not really comparing like with like. What's undeniable is that public opinion about the monarchy is at a fascinating crossroads right now. Younger generations are asking hard questions about relevance, about value, about whether the institution serves a purpose in modern Britain. And when stories like this emerge, whether they're true, partially true, or completely fabricated, they don't help the cause of monarchists trying to argue for the continued importance of the crown. The timing of these reports is also worth noting. Charles is relatively new in his role as king. He's trying to establish his reign, to show leadership, to prove that he can be the monarch Britain needs. Having his personal life and past relationships dominating headlines isn't ideal. Whether these stories have merit or not, they're a distraction from the work he's trying to do. And that's frustrating for everyone involved, regardless of where the truth actually lies. Let's talk about Diana for a moment, because her name inevitably comes up in these discussions. There's no question she went through tremendous pain during her marriage. There's no question she felt betrayed and struggled with the public scrutiny. Some people look at these new reports and feel like they vindicate things Diana said or hinted at during her lifetime. Others caution against projecting current narratives onto the past. The truth is, Diana isn't here to speak for herself, and using her memory to support any particular version of events feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? What would constitute proof in a situation like this? That's actually a really important question. We're talking about events that allegedly happened decades ago, involving private conversations and personal relationships. Even if investigations are happening, and reports suggest they might be, what kind of evidence would be conclusive? Documents can be interpreted in multiple ways. Witness testimony from decades ago is notoriously unreliable. And personal motivations colour everything people say about the past. The challenge with royal stories is that so much happens behind closed doors. The palace rarely comments on personal matters. There's a culture of discretion that means we, the public, often never get the full story. We get leaks, we get sources close to, we get carefully managed statements, but rarely do we get complete transparency. So we're left piecing together narratives from fragments, and different people will assemble those fragments into very different pictures. Here's something worth considering. Even if absolutely none of these allegations are true, even if this is entirely baseless speculation, the fact that the story has gained this much traction tells us something. It tells us there's public appetite for complex royal narratives. It tells us people are willing to believe that relationships at that level of power and privilege might involve more calculation than romance. It tells us trust in institutions, including the monarchy, isn't what it used to be. But let's flip that around. What if the opposite is true? What if this is genuinely just an ex-husband with hurt feelings making unsubstantiated claims? What if the real story is that Charles and Camilla genuinely love each other, that their relationship survived decades of scrutiny because it was real, and that all of this is just noise? That's equally possible. And if that's the case, imagine how unfair this whole circus must feel to them. The monarchy as an institution has survived scandals before. Much bigger ones, actually. This isn't the abdication crisis. This isn't the Edward and Wallis situation. Even if every detail in these reports turned out to be accurate, the institution would likely weather the storm. But it does raise questions about how much the British public is willing to tolerate, how much benefit of the doubt they're willing to extend, And at what point the cost of maintaining the monarchy outweighs the perceived benefits. What happens next is genuinely anyone's guess. Will there be official denials? Will more information come out? Will this whole thing blow over in a few weeks when the next royal story dominates headlines? Royal news cycles move incredibly fast. Something that feels earth-shattering today might be completely forgotten by next month. Or, alternatively, this could be the beginning of a much longer and more complicated unravelling of carefully maintained narratives. One thing I think we can all agree on: the British royal family is never boring. Whether you're a devoted monarchist, a curious observer, or someone who thinks the whole institution should be abolished, you have to admit the story never stops generating material. And in the age of social media, where everyone has an opinion and can share it instantly, royal stories take on a life of their own that would have been impossible in previous generations. Right, I want to hear your thoughts on this. But before you comment, remember, we're discussing unverified reports and media speculation here. What's your take on these allegations? Do you think there's substance to them, or do you see this as a case of tabloid sensationalism? How do you view the monarchy in 2025? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all, and I love hearing different perspectives on these complex issues. If you found this analysis interesting and want to stay updated on royal news as it develops, make sure to like this video, share it with anyone who enjoys royal commentary, and subscribe to the channel with notifications on. We're covering all the major royal stories, always trying to be balanced, always trying to separate fact from speculation, and always keeping the conversation going. Everything discussed in this video is based on media reports, public speculation, and commentary. None of the allegations or claims mentioned have been officially verified or confirmed by Buckingham Palace or any involved parties. This content is presented for entertainment and discussion purposes only and should not be taken as established fact. We encourage viewers to seek out multiple sources and form their own informed opinions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.